This is a short piece by Richard Selzer, the great surgeon and writer about medicine. It chronicles the time when the Dalai Lama's personal physician came to the hospital where he works and did grand rounds. So here it is. A Doctor's Touch by Richard Selzer. On the bulletin board in the front hall of the hospital where I work, there appeared an announcement. Yeshi Dandan, it read, will make rounds at 6 o'clock on the morning of June 10. The particulars were then given, followed by a notation. Yeshi Dandan is personal physician to the Dalai Lama. I am not so leathery a skeptic that I would knowingly ignore an emissary from the gods. Not only might such sang-froid be inimical to one's earthly well-being, it could take care of eternity as well. Thus, on the morning of June 10, I joined the clutch of whitecoats waiting in the small conference room adjacent to the ward selected for the rounds. The air in the room is heavy with ill-concealed dubiety and suspicion of bamboozlement. At precisely 6 o'clock, he materializes. A short, golden, barrel-y man dressed in a sleeveless robe of saffron and maroon. His scalp is shaven, and the only visible hair is a scanty black line above each hooded eye. He bows in greeting while his young interpreter makes the introduction. Yeshi Dandan, we are told, will examine a patient selected by a member of the staff. The diagnosis is as unknown to Yeshi Dandan as it is to us. The examination of the patient will take place in our presence, after which we will reconvene in the conference room where Yeshi Dandan will discuss the case. We are further informed that for the past 2 hours Yeshi Dandan has purified himself by bathing, fasting, and prayer. I, having breakfasted well, performed only the most desultory of ablutions, and given no thought at all to my soul, glance furtively at my fellows. Suddenly we seem a soiled, uncouth lot. The patient had been awakened early and told that she was to be examined by a foreign doctor, and had been asked to produce a fresh specimen of urine. So when we enter her room, the woman shows no surprise. She has long ago taken on that mixture of compliance and resignation that is the facies of chronic illness. This was to be but another in an endless series of tests and examinations. Yeshi Dandan steps to the bedside while the rest stand apart watching. For a long time he gazes at the woman, favoring no part of her body with his eyes, but seeming to fix his glance at a place just above her supine form. I, too, study her. No physical sign nor obvious symptom gives a clue to the nature of her disease. At last he takes her hand, raising it in both his own. Now he bends over the bed in a kind of crouching stance, his head drawn down in the collar of his robe. His eyes are closed as he feels for her pulse. In a moment he has found the spot, and for the next half-hour he remains thus, suspended above the patient like some exotic golden bird with folded wings, holding the pulse of the woman beneath his fingers, cradling her hand in his. All the power of the man seems to have been drawn down into this one purpose. It is palpation of the pulse raised to the state of ritual. From the foot of the bed where I stand, it is as though he and the patient have entered a special place of isolation, of apartness, about which a vacancy hovers, and across which no violation is possible. After a moment, the woman rests back upon her pillow. From time to time she raises her head to look at the strange figure above her, then sinks back once more. I cannot see their hands joined in a correspondence that is exclusive, intimate, his fingertips receiving the voice of her sick body through the rhythm and throb she offers at her wrist. All at once I am envious, not of him, not of Yeshi Dandan for his gift of beauty and holiness, but of her. I want to be held like that, touched so, received. And I know that I, who have palpated 100,000 pulses, have not felt a single one. At last Yeshidanden straightens, gently places the woman's hand upon the bed, and steps back. The interpreter produces a small wooden bowl and 2 sticks. Yeshidanden pours a portion of the urine specimen into the bowl and proceeds to whip the liquid with the 2 sticks. This he does for several minutes until a foam is raised. Then, bowing above the bowl, he inhales the odor 3 times. He sets down the bowl and turns to leave. All this while he has not uttered a single word. As he nears the door, the woman raises her head and calls out to him in a voice at once urgent and serene. "Thank you, doctor," she says, and touches with her other hand the place he had held on her wrist, as though to recapture something that had visited there. Yeshidanden turns back for a moment to gaze at her, then steps into the corridor. Rounds are at an end. We are seated once more in the conference room. Yeshidanden speaks now for the first time in a soft Tibetan sound that I have never heard before. He has barely begun when the young interpreter begins to translate, the 2 voices continuing in tandem, a bilingual fugue, the one chasing the other. It is like the chanting of monks. He speaks of winds coursing through the body of the woman, currents that break against barriers, eddying. These vortices are in her blood, he says, the last spendings of an imperfect heart. Between the chambers of her heart, long, long before she was born, a wind had come and blown open a deep gate that must never be opened. Through it charged the full waters of her river, as the mountain stream cascades in the springtime, battering, knocking loose the land, and flooding her breath. Thus he speaks, and is silent. "May we now have the diagnosis?" a professor asks. The host of these rounds, the man who knows, answers. "Congenital heart disease," he says. "Intraventricular septal defect," a hole in the wall between the left and right chambers of the heart, with resultant heart failure. A gateway in the heart, I think, that must not be opened. Through it charge the full waters that flood her breath. So, here then is the doctor, listening to the sounds of the body to which the rest of us are deaf. He is more than doctor. He is priest.